morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Olkey. I'm Director of Adult Education here at the Spy Museum. So excited to welcome you to our third talk in our series with the Smithsonian Associates, A View from Inside the CIA and FBI. And this morning, we'll be focusing on an agent of change at the FBI, Cassandra Chandler. Cassie is the CEO of the Chandler Consulting Group. She has led a distinguished career as an innovative strategist identifying and addressing emerging cyber and fraud risks in the banking industry and as a senior executive within U.S. government services and the financial services industry. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about her career in the financial sector because it's so impressive, and then we'll get to the FBI stuff. She has served as a leader on the global diversity and inclusion boards of both Bank of America and Louisiana State University, and currently serves as an independent federal monitor with the NYPD. Cassie is also president and managing partner of Vigio Alliance, a leadership and talent risk assessment and skills training firm. She retired as Senior Vice President for Business Operations at Bank of America, where she was responsible for building an integrated framework to identify, evaluate, and assess emerging risks and the operational effectiveness of enterprise coverage areas. She served as the bank's Senior Global Investigative Services Executive, developing a prevention-focused global fraud investigations program that detected and prevented fraud, cybercrimes, and other emerging security risks, with a focus on loss, prevention, and value return to the business. Cassie joined Bank of America in January 2008 following her retirement from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where she spent 23 years managing, directing, and leading criminal, terrorism, and cybercrimes investigations and foreign intelligence activities. She led the redesign of the Bureau's healthcare fraud and criminal intelligence programs. She was appointed to the U.S. Senior Executive Service as an assistant director, where she was responsible for rebuilding the Bureau's new agent training program. She also served as an attorney in the Office of Legal Counsel and special agent in charge of the Norfolk Field Office. Before joining the FBI, Cassie was an attorney with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and a reporter and anchor person for an NBC affiliate, and we're going to gain a lot from that incredible presentation background. She's pretty amazing. She's the recipient of numerous awards and recognitions, including the Senior Executive Service Presidential Rank Award of Meritorious Executive under President George W. Bush. Thank you, Cassie, so much for being here. We are so excited.
Thank you, dear heart. Okay, I had to let her know that I love shaking hands, but I'm a hugger. So, I'm from the South. We still believe in hugging people. That can be a little scary for folks, by the way, you see them, especially people like, D.C. and East Coast. You can hug them and like, whoa, what's this person doing? Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to tell you a little bit more about my career. I've got a nice little outline over here, but I want to kind of chat with you, so you're going to see me move a lot. If I start driving you nuts because I'm moving, just say, whoa, whoa, whoa. So, slow it down, lady, slow it down. So one of the things that Amanda told you about is that I was an agent for change in the FBI. And when I look back over my career in those 23 years, and I started thinking about it after talking to her, and I said, geez, it really was. Basically, the areas that I did change came mostly after September 11, 2001. So when I look at my career prior to that, I was pretty much moving along as most special agents do. And then things happened after 9/11, and a lot of things had to change, right? So I had to change along with it, and I had to help work with those in the FBI to see how we could change it as well. Prior to September 11th, I had come into the FBI with a legal background as an attorney, and I came in and I worked for a few years, for the most part focusing on financial crimes, white-collar crimes, public corruption, government frauds. And then I moved around quite a bit, which is part of the career about being in the FBI. You move from this city to that, you gain a little experience, and as you continue to move up the rank and file, moving into supervisory positions, you eventually continue to move into new cities, gain new experience, expand the things that you're doing, expand the number of people that are reporting to you, and you gain your leadership skills that way. So part of that work took me through Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco. I was the assistant special agent in charge in San Francisco, the first black female to move up in the ranks and files of the FBI to get to that role. And I had responsibility for foreign counterintelligence for the first time. Now, I spent, as I said, most of my investigative career in the criminal side of the house, white-collar crimes. And so I want you to imagine this person coming in and getting responsibility for foreign counterintelligence. And I'm with a group of people who know it a whole lot better than I do. And I can recall just one of those occasions when they were getting ready to do an operation. And I'm sitting in this room, and they've got the screens, and they've got these guys with the little black bag kind of a thing coming in to talk to me, and a number of other people and attorneys, and it's just a room full of folks. And they're planning this operation. And I sat and I looked at it. And it was almost like, I'd gone through my special training at the FBI about being in the foreign counterintelligence side of the house. And I even went into the FBI, by the way, because I love James Bond. And I thought I was going to be Miss Bondette, right? Or Juanetta Bond or something like that. But I really loved all the intrigue about that. But this was my first time as an assistant special agent in charge in San Francisco. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to all these things and I'm thinking, whoa, okay. And I'm sitting and I'm talking to the individuals, and then they said, Mrs. Chandler, do you approve this operation? It was the most fascinating time of my bureau career, was working in San Francisco in counterintelligence. I just want you to know it's a beautiful, brilliant field to work in. Criminal investigative is a lot more about following the crime, trying to determine who committed it, how they did it, and then bringing that person to justice. Counterintelligence, however, is more about that detection and prevention and the intelligence sharing part that I soon learned after that I really liked. I liked that side of the house. So my career continued to move forward. I went to work back in Washington, D.C. as the head of the FBI's section for criminal and domestic terrorism intelligence. And it was my responsibility then to refocus the intelligence program on the criminal side of the house, to give it as strong an intelligence capability as we had on the counterintelligence side of the house. During that time period, we had kind of moved, the criminal intelligence part had good financial analysts, some good intelligence analysts, but we also had moved a couple of folks who really were not qualified for those roles into those positions. And if you go back and you look at the history, you're gonna find those stories, right? We did have a couple of individuals who had been former secretaries or really good people, and you wanted to give them a higher paying job, and that was one of the intelligence kind of roles you could sort of put them in if you had a position on. So my job was go back to headquarters and refocus that effort. I started working with those on the counterintelligence side of the house and in the terrorism intelligence side of the house to try and refocus our criminal intelligence program. And then 9/11 hit. So I'm sitting with a group of my supervisors walking through what the next program we're gonna do. We're gonna have to move these individuals out. We're gonna have to increase the education expectations. We need to have a better training program. And someone came in and said, whoa, Cassie, you just had planes hit 2 buildings in New York. So it wasn't just a plane accident. When the second hit, it was like, whoa, something's not right here. And so we started getting our things together, and at the time, I was responsible for the Strategic Information Operations Center, called SIOC, in the FBI, until the lead who was supposed to be responsible for it came into town, and he was about a week off from that job. So right after 9, the things started happening, and I learned a lot during that time period, guys. I learned how to treat my family better because I didn't do a very good job. I'm sitting through this time period, which is a frightening time all across America, and I forgot to call my mother. You see? Some people just think, well, yeah, but you're the FBI. Always call your mom. When I finally called my mother that day, and she had been sending me all these messages, when I finally called my mother that day, it was about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. I hadn't called her all day. A friend of the family who was also a cousin answered the telephone, and she said, Aunt Ophelia, it's Cassandra. She's okay. And I heard my mother weeping. Oh, guys, always call your mom. I had forgotten my husband was going to the Pentagon that day. He was also a special agent, and he was working at the White House. And so I had forgotten he was going just that day. And what happened on that day at the Pentagon, guys? Right? Plane hit the Pentagon. I forgot. I forgot my son was at school that day and that I was supposed to pick him up that day. I was in special agent mode, working. Put this person here, we're going to do this. I'm answering the phone, the FAA is calling, I'm sending a message out to the director because this is my responsibility, right? Oh, I said, you know, there's a plane that's disappeared in Pennsylvania. They don't know where it is, and it might be headed back here. People running out of the office. Oh, my gosh. It's coming back. It could hit the FBI. It could hit the White House. It could hit DOJ. Wow, people were running out. You know what? Do you know what my failure was there? I didn't think about the people. It was all about the job. And the job is very important. And it is important for us to have people in those roles who will think first and foremost about the job. But I learned a valuable lesson that day. Anyway, moving on from that, by the way, yes, my husband did finally get back to his car. He did finally go and pick our son up. I learned later, because I didn't see my son for 2 days because I had to sleep on the floor those first 2 days after 9/11. Everybody we were in full movement. You know, you slept a couple hours, you woke up and you went back to work. But I learned from my son later, Mom, I was the last kid at school, and I was so afraid. Not that I want to break everybody's heart telling you how, you know, what an awful mother I was, but I just want you to know I learned a lot of great things about how to be a better human being during that time period as well. So after going through that, we started realizing that the FBI needed to change, right? I don't know if you can recall the 9/11 Commission report. It made an indication that there was a failure of intelligence sharing. We found out that the CIA knew things we didn't know. We knew things the CIA didn't know. Other agencies and groups knew things that others didn't. And we saw things developing, didn't we? We had a Homeland Security develop finally. We had a Counterterrorism Intelligence Center put up, the Counterterrorism NCTC Center was created. And if you go in there, guys, they've got these big screens and they've got little pods where members of the CIA, the FBI, and all these various 17 components of the National Directorate of Intelligence are all sitting around these pods, and they can pull information now from everywhere, right? The analyst from the CIA can pull it from the FBI's computers, or vice versa and so forth. So we never have that failure again. No more will we have a failure of intelligence. Well, in order to do that as well, the FBI had to change how it was training. And so the director called me in and said, Cassie, I need you to go out to be the assistant director of the training division, and we need to reshape the FBI's training program. So we had to move to focus more on the FBI's priorities, which had changed from criminal being the #1 priority to intelligence being the #1 priority. So we had to create an intelligence training program at the FBI Academy. We had to change the agents' training, and I worked with the group there to change it from, I know some people were disheartened to learn, 16 weeks of training to 20 weeks of training. And I'm sure a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, now I gotta be in these little cubes and walk around the little glass place in the FBI's Academy for 20 weeks. But we were able to teach a lot more during that 20-week period about the importance of intelligence and foreign intelligence and foreign counterintelligence and terrorism. And so we became more of a prevention-focused agency. This kid had the opportunity to work on redefining the FBI's entire training program. As the assistant director of the FBI's Academy at Quantico, Quantico is located on the Marine Corps base. I don't know if many of you were aware of that. It is a 500-acre facility within the much broader Marine Corps base at Quantico, Virginia. And so when you're in the role as the assistant director, you are then at that time on the base a 2-star general. And you receive the respect as a 2-star general. So it was a fascinating time to be there. But then something else happened. We were going through all this new training. We started virtual training academies. We started working with the Kellogg School to do more leadership type of training. We had created an intelligence training program. We had agents and analysts working together on scenarios. It was a beautiful thing. I was so happy. Best job in the world is the FBI Academy Assistant Director, big office. little place to go and eat, your own bathroom, shower, things, it was nice. And the director called me back and said, we're getting eaten alive in the press. I understand you have a background in the news, Cassie. Why don't you come back and work with us for about 90 days, and reshape our Office of Public Affairs? So I did. I went back for 90 days. Woo. It was the time period when we were having probably the most horrific time in the media, other than right now, at the FBI, because it was when we started learning about the failures. It was after the 9/11 Commission report. It was after everything started coming alive and saying, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that, right? Everybody had, and the FBI, So if you did this, someone in the national media said, they did this. So you had to kind of figure out ways to see how we could work with the media better. My thought, and Director Robert Mueller was the director at the time and he agreed, was that let's just take the whole mystery out of the FBI. Let's just start telling our story a whole lot more. Give me the authority to say as much as I possibly can to let the media know what we're doing and who we are and how we're doing what we do. Promise not to cross the line, but help me to get there. And so the entire team at the Office of Public Affairs started working more closely together with the media, not just the national media, but we had local media groups in our 56 field offices. We were working, preparing, and giving that same message. And sometimes when there was a bad story at headquarters, I would work with the group strategically, the smaller offices, to do a bit of deflection. We can't get past this bad story, guys. But hey, let's talk about this good stuff over in your office, in your office, in your office. Does that bring to mind anyone who might be doing something similar to that today? A deflection strategy. So we did work on that. We started moving towards doing more things in television. I put the director on such things like Larry King Live. He's like, Larry King Live, yeah. Come out there, talk to Larry King Live. We did National Public Radio, Good Morning America. We did just tons and tons of shows, National Geographic. And so we got the FBI's message out. Well, we needed to do a little bit more. We needed to engage the community. And so I worked with the team and I developed a National Citizens Academy. Now, we had Citizens Academy on the local level in several of our offices, but we decided we needed to make it even broader. We needed to have it all across the FBI. We needed to make sure people knew who we were and why and what we did. And so we developed that. And Citizens Academies, if you haven't had a chance to get involved in any, most FBI offices, I'm sure, still today have Citizens Academies. Please go on out, get to know that FBI office, learn more about what they're doing behind the scenes. It's available to you. And so these Citizens Academies at the national level would then bring up individuals and teach them. We would bring them out with us at firearms. We would bring them to the places we went. We would show them how we were digging in intelligence, the kinds of things that we're doing, and people started learning more. It was also after 9/11, and we still were having some problems with the Muslim community because of some of the negative comments and information and feelings and thoughts and perceptions that had occurred right after 9/11. And so we would work with that community to also help them tell their story so that we could have a broader impact together. That was a great time period for me. I could see the fruits of the labor when I saw the changes in people's thoughts and perspectives about the FBI. Now, I do want you to know, being in the Office of Public Affairs, and I was also the FBI's national spokesperson, so you know what that meant, right? Bad story comes, I have to stand up and da-da-da-da-da. And the reporter says, da-da-da, I said, da-da-da-da-da. And I would just think, I'm gonna say this 5,000 times until you stop asking me the question. You can change that question 50 million times. You're gonna get the same answer consistently until they just say, let's forget it. But I had good relations with the reporters because they did see that we had opened the doors, and I would always try and give them someone to speak to. But during that time period, guys, I had lost feeling in my right leg, couldn't drive anymore with my right leg. I had to drive with my left because of the stress. So what I learned at 9/11 was call your mom. What I learned with the Office of Public Affairs was don't let it stress you. Woke up one day, some horrible story, and I would wake up every morning, 4:30 in the morning, click on National Public Radio, because you could do your thing without disturbing my husband or my son. I was in there 4:30 in the morning. I would just hurry up and or get into the office. I usually had to actually see how bad the news was that day with another team of analysts who were looking at the news reports. We would go through it, type up what we were going to have the director say, because the director had to see President Bush every day and give him an accounting of what's done and why is this being said in the media. So we would get him ready, right? By the time I got to the office and all that done, get him ready, he was always in before 7 a.m., and so he had to have all his stuff by 6:30. So you get the story? You see where I'm going? It was a very stressful time. I would wait and then take my shower, change clothes and put on makeup and the high-heel shoes somewhere, and when the director finally left, go to the gym and now you can go get yourself cleaned up. So going through that stuff, not only did the leg go bad, guess what else went bad? Woke up one morning, a bad news day. Oh, I don't want to say what newspaper it was, but bad news day. 3 of my eyelashes had turned stark white. I've plucked them out since, but now there's this gap in my eyelashes, and I always account it to the Washington, D.C. National News. So that said, we did have great relations. We did a lot of incredible things in the Office of Public Affairs, and we did open the FBI's, the image of the Bureau and the things we did. As a matter of fact, I remember seeing at one time, I had a little comment here that I had written. I had the opportunity to speak with former director and federal judge, William Webster at the J. Edgar Hoover Foundation. And I came into the FBI. I came from a family who all we knew about the FBI was COINTELPRO and what was done to blacks back during the 60s. And I thought, wow, here it is, this little brown girl now gets a chance to speak at the J. Edgar Hoover Foundation. And it was a great opportunity. Judge Webster and I talked about America. That was back what made America great at that time was being American, and it was a beautiful thing. And so we went through this process, and I saw the change and the influence of things that were occurring, but now I'm getting close to retirement. You know, that age of retiring in the FBI was rapidly starting to approach, and I said to the director, okay, can I get out of the Office of Public Affairs? I just want to be the special agent in charge of my own little wonderful office somewhere somewhere small and medium. And so he appointed me as the special agent in charge of the office in Norfolk, Virginia. And I'm going to read to you what he said at that time when he made the appointment. He said, over the years, Cassie has reshaped the Office of Public Affairs to provide greater support to the FBI's new priorities. She is responsible for the FBI's proactive stance with the news media, a complete revamp of the FBI's website, its expansion of its fugitive publicity program to support counterterrorism, and expansion of the FBI Citizens Academy. She oversaw communications during a time of unprecedented change, including eyelashes falling out, helping to facilitate the FBI's ongoing transformation. She has served as a key advisor to me and other executives on both public and employee communication, and most importantly, he said, she helped us strike the proper balance under often difficult circumstances between informing the public and protecting national security and the privacy rights of individuals. So of all the things I did in those 23 years of my career, despite the fact that this was a really tough time, and I am very appreciative of the work and support I had of the training division and work I had to do, the place I felt I had the greatest impact was the place that took my eyelashes out and stopped me from using my right leg when I drive. Stressful, but important. It was an important role. And so I left that position and I went on to become the special agent in charge of Norfolk, Virginia. And during that time period, I had oversight of working the relations with law enforcement. I don't know if you know the area, but you've got Virginia Beach, Newport News, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, a lot of different independent law enforcement communities there. Beautiful people, brilliant, wonderful place to work, great people, enjoyed it very much. We also had the Navy Second Fleet. We also had Joint Forces Command. We also had 2 national laboratories that was always a keen interest to our counterintelligence friends and neighbors. And so it was just this thrilling time. In fact, in that particular site was also the CIA's own university called the Forum. And we had to have responsibility for making sure nobody did any bad things to the Forum. And it was a great time. So I look back over all the things I did in my FBI career, and I can just say, guys, what a wonderful opportunity. My mother raised me to believe that someday I would be an attorney. So If she hadn't put that thought in my head, I probably would never have gone to law school, but it was put in my head as a child, so I knew I had to become an attorney. And she would say, you will fight injustice. You will be like Thurgood Marshall. Keep that in your mind. And she drilled it, and she drilled it, right? And so when I looked at my career and I thought, well, I didn't exactly become a Supreme Court justice like Justice Marshall, but that wonderful time in the FBI, the opportunities I had to be an agent of change, allowed me to have my impact my way, and I'm appreciative for it. So with that said, I would like to open up for questions and hear what you would like to know more of. Thank you. Other than little bugs on the floor.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm just joking. Yes.
The previous FBI agent who was here also mentioned that he was promoted. In the FBI, they get promoted in an area they have no expertise. So you were promoted to counterintelligence, having to make those decisions. Why does the FBI has that? And the people working there and say, how can you tell me what to do if you've never been around doing any of that?
Okay, good question. And the question is, okay, you were promoted to counterintelligence, but you didn't have experience there. Let me help you understand what the FBI's program is for promotion. For the most part, agents are expected to learn everything. And so part of your promotion is continuous training at the FBI Academy, continuous in-service training. You learn these things. It's just that you don't have the lead for it. So that by the time you reach an assistant special agent in charge position, you have bits and pieces of experience in everything. You have a primary area of focus, which mine was white-collar crime, but it does not preclude you from leading individuals who have the experience in counterintelligence, in terrorism, and other areas. So that any agent who goes beyond the state level, the local field office, has to be able to handle everything. And so they're taught a variety of things. You have specialists. You have agents who specialize in counterintelligence or public corruption or terrorism, but everyone has some experience in their background of doing it. So it's okay when they get to that ASAC level that they're able to look at a broader program. They've got other experts right beneath them for support. Is that good? Did I answer you? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Hi, first of all, thank you for your service to the country.
Thank you.
And secondly, I realize you're retired now, but how would you assess the sharing of information between the different branches today?
You would ask me that question. Well, when the 9/11 Commission made its comments about a failure of imagination and the failure of intelligence, the first thing we have to think about is, what does it mean to have a failure of imagination? That all of those agencies that were involved in pulling out intelligence couldn't see the possibility of planes being used as missiles, right? Now let's step forward a little more into 2020. And what is the greatest threat we're faced with today? Can anybody imagine? Cyber, right? We are not sharing cyber intelligence the way we need to. And if anybody wants to challenge me on it, come and see me. The way that we share counterterrorism and terrorism intelligence and information globally in that counterterrorism center, we are still operating on the cyber side of the house like we did when we were operating terrorism before 9/11. Every little pocket of group or organization or agency, we've got a lot of little task forces. We've got this little sharing here and that little sharing there. But do you have a National Directorate of Cyber Intelligence? Making sure all of that information is seen. I worked in the banking industry. Okay, I really feel really bad because you really took me in a wrong spot here. I worked in the banking industry, and part of our role, and especially on my side of the house, which was investigations, right, was to make sure that if we identified any criminal activity at a certain dollar amount, we would report it to FinCEN. And it was called reporting through suspicious activity reports. So now, all of the banks are reporting this. Those banks are now reporting cyber incidents because if it hits a certain dollar amount, right, where's that information going? How is that intelligence being received, reviewed, analyzed, and then redisseminated back to the people who need to have it most importantly? How often are we getting hit by ransom now? Hospitals, cities, organizations. How many do you have to have someone else coming in? a cyber crimes expert helping some foreign intelligence country in order to do the work that they need to do, but it comes in through the cyber crimes perspective. I would say my perspective is that we are certainly not handling cyber in the method and the manner in which we should be. We can do better than this. It is time for us to use our imagination in America and step it up on cyber intelligence. Does that answer your question? Oh, no. Well, okay, let me try and make you feel a little better. We do have several agencies working on cyber crimes and cyber issues, and and the information is shared eventually, and we do stop some things, but then it's just that the organizations are constantly changing. And through digital technology, and I think we're going to have something like 20 billion telephones connected, just this year alone. I mean, you have just the digital connectivity, artificial intelligence. There's so much out there. We've got to figure out ways to have the right tools in the right hands in the government, with our law enforcement and other partners, and that they're sharing that information and intelligence timely, and is shared with private industries, and somehow a training and education capability is going out to all of those mom and pops at home who keep getting flooded back in to all the type of cyber crimes. And of course, just to make you feel a little bad, all of our privacy information is probably all out on the dark web, right? Just thought I'd throw that out. All right, enough with that. But thank you for that question, it's very good. I think it's very important that we refocus on the cyber.
Lady right here.
Oh, yes.
Hi. Thank you for retraining the FBI and your PR work. I'm originally from Minneapolis. I was there during 9/11. And as you recall, an FBI agent had contacted the office in New York and told them that she was suspicious because these terrorists, these people, were taking flight training only to take off, not to land. And that somehow was not, no one paid attention to that clue, which was a big clue, right? So with all of this retraining and considering the fact that the gentleman in our first session said the FBI agents are only trained for 2 years and they move on, how can we be assured that that kind of miscommunication is not going to happen again? I mean, say Miss Minnesota Nice again in the FBI calls, but she's just been a young trainee, and that somebody in the Pentagon or wherever she sends that information is going to be, she's going to be they're going to pay attention to that information.
So, great question. I would say, I feel very confident that failure of imagination on terrorism will not occur again. There are so many people involved in the collection, analysis, redisseminating of intelligence information in terrorism. I do not feel, it's highly unlikely they're going to come up with a new scenario that people aren't thinking about. I teach a class at Pace University in New York just about that very same thing, and it's interesting to see how some of the students would come in with thoughts and perspectives of what could happen, but it's still in terrorism. So agents are not just trained for 2 years and they go away. It's a continuous training their entire career. I just want to make sure, I don't know how that came across, but agents are trained their entire years. You can't stop being trained when it comes to crime or terrorism or intelligence because it keeps changing. And so they're continuously changed through in-services or back at the academy. My fear, however, is despite what I just said to you in terrorism, we don't have that same level of dedication and imagination on the other side of the house in cyber. But I know that the current director, Ray, has given that indication, and he has stressed to the agents how important it is. One of the things they do, for example, they go and see the 9/11 memorial, and he does that just to remind new agent trainees and new intelligence analyst trainees of the importance of their job. No more failure of imagination. No more failure of intelligence, okay? Okay. Yes?
Yes, you got up to the point that I was going to ask a question about, but you really didn't go over it. Having been in the private sector, Bank Secrecy Act, suspicious activity reports, currency transaction over 10,000, filed endlessly. Now, from the financial institution industry point of view, they the feeling was most of those reports went into the void, or if it wasn't above enough information, et cetera. Now, since you've been on both sides, I want to pursue a little more, especially since now you've been on the banking side too. Do you think there is really enough focus on all those reports being filed and any communication back to the private sector about the value of filing those reports? Because I said you got up to the fact that they are filed endlessly. But since you've been on the private sector side, do you think that the government is really doing enough information with all that reporting and working with the private sector better to discuss the value of the reporting, how the private sector might be more involved, where there's specific instances where they should be looking deeper and following? I just want to pursue that a little more because there's a great frustration about the endless filing under the Bank Secrecy Act and the value of it. So since you've been on both sides, tell me if it's valuable and why.
The FBI, I'm sorry, let me backtrack a minute.
You mentioned
government,
FinCEN, that's why I just said the government.
the government, FinCEN et al., OCC, FDIC,
All of them.
all of the above, OTS, everybody who's involved in that side of the, they do a wonderful job coming in and checking whether or not you're doing suspicious activity reports. And all of these banks are doing suspicious activity reports. They've got massive people involved fulfilling that mission under the anti-money laundering statute. That information does go into the void. By the time FinCEN takes the information and does an analysis and pumps the information back out, sometimes it's a year later, it's not as thorough and complete an analytic product that can be useful back to the banking industry. I think it is a complete failure of the government in the way that we're handling intelligence, from whether it's just the cybercrimes or the frauds, we have this void. And if you take a look at frauds and you say the time to report it is if it's $10,000, and you've got all these fraud rings who, if you don't have a team that knows how to detect a ring, that can say, this $2,000 one, that $1,500 one, that $1,200 one, that all adds up to $10,000, and this is one single group doing it, that's information that's gone out the door. And then you have customers and clients who don't understand the way cyber frauds are being committed, and they're going on these compromised emails, and they're getting that information back into you in some shape, form, or fashion. It is the financial industry that's reporting it, but the same types of things are happening to what? Facebook, social media components, other areas, other businesses, and all of that information to the other businesses is not even required to be reported. So there is a complete failure of intelligence when it comes to cyber and fraud from our government. We do not have the capability yet of finding it, reviewing it, analyzing it, ensuring of what's occurring in the United States and getting that information back out to the people that it most impact. We do not. Thank you for that question.
It's been required for at least 30 plus years, so it'd be nice if someone does something more with the information.
Let's just say that they've got the capability. I mean, we've got things like the IC3, we've got access. FinCEN has its group. It's just no one single directorate of this to bring all that information together and ensure that it is constantly done like we do with terrorism and the information intelligence there. I'm a firm believer in that. This is not my first time saying it.
Well, having been in compliance for years doing that and saying, okay, guys, you got to do it, but I can't tell you if it's any valuable information.
And the last thing I would say back to you before you sit down, you have seen it from the banking side of the house. There's so much more rich intelligence about frauds and crimes that are occurring in industries all across America. And you never see that because they're not required to disseminate their information and intelligence. They can clean it up, hide it, and run away, right? Because they don't want their clients to see they've done something wrong or they've been impacted. So they can hide it and keep on going. Banking industry has to report it. These do not. Where's all that intelligence going? Great question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I have two questions. I'm going to ask one, then I'm going to get back in line. So the first one is about cyber war. We call it cyber war, but just this past week or so, there was an issue of charging some of the military in China who were involved in Equifax and the OPM breach, and where they've stolen a lot of information about Americans, right? Which they're for some reason, because they undoubtedly intend to do something with that information at some time, right? So
I'm
what
not
is-
saying right.
What
Because
is
you're going
a-
to put me in a conspiracy theorist role here. Okay, no, go right ahead.
Well, I would assume if you steal something, you plan to do something with it.
I agree. Go ahead.
So I think the challenge is, what's a proportionate response? I mean, it's the military. Do we fire a rocket at those people if we know who those people are?
No,
Do we
no.
do something that is related to cyber action, where we expose what we can do and do it on a small scale, and then we won't be able to do it on a large scale because we've exposed what we can do? That's not a good thing. So how is it, what's a reasonable way to react to the kinds of things when we do discover what they are?
That's a tough question for me, single individual person, to respond to, because I'm pretty radical when it comes to things like that. So I better not respond. I don't want this to go up for YouTube and it says, Cassie said you should just take a while and do it. So let me just say, in response to that question, the cyber war that we have today, that is just the beginning. And if Russia can get into our systems and our social media and change the mentality and the thinking of our people just by manipulating certain stories that go out, and we get false stories put in, and we've got deflections and all of those kinds of things, and these are the strategies. The old style of war is kind of becoming, that's old school. Shooting and killing people. The way to get people will be all through cyber. It's going to be all digital. So the question is not so much how to counterattack now. It's about how we need to start using our imagination, seeing what they are doing, what they have received, since I'm one of those, 100,000 or more federal employees, and my entire background investigation is now in the hands of the Chinese. What can they do with it is the question. What can we do to start planning how to counter it if they do? Use our imagination, and then what are we doing to gather and collect information from others? How do we know what they're doing? Why is it we learn what they've done after they've done it? What's our prevention, detection strategies to make sure we're staying at least a step ahead in this regard? So, I didn't answer your question as well as you would like.
It can't be 100% defensive. The answer can't be 100%.
It cannot be 100% defensive, absolutely not, yes. But don't have a failure of imagination, America. Use your imagination. We've got a lot of people writing stories for sci-fi, right? I don't know if any of you are old school Star Trek fans, right? Okay, well, let's think about this. Just hold your moment with me, folks. For my Star Trek fans here, not Star Wars. That's not really the thing. Star Trek. Do you see all the stuff on Star Trek, The Next Generation, that's occurring today? And that it was, 20, 30 years after all that, it started happening, right? Right down to our cell phones, Kindle books, the communications, all of these things. Replicators. So, replicators, right? So when we think about that, somebody has an imagination. Why aren't we using that imagination in defense? In cyber war? Why are we using those kinds of imaginative people to do things? Don't consider them just the crazies or the writers. There's some brilliance in there. I like having people like that on my team. I always have Star Trek people, and any intelligence team I have, I want some Star Trek people in there. Okay. Let's get back to the reality here. Yes, sir.
The agent that reported the pilot from Minneapolis, wasn't she forced out?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The agent that reported from Minneapolis about the 9/11 pilots, all right, she was forced out of the agency, wasn't she?
Forced out of the agency. No, she was not forced out of the agency. You can't just be, it's the US government. It takes a little bit more than just, I force you out. Some people might be miserable and choose to leave, but the term forced out, what exactly does that mean? You can make me miserable, you can tell me things. Unless you have a legitimate purpose for firing me, you can't fire me. I'm a US government employee. So forcing someone out, that concept, I'm gonna have to say no, because I know my personality, no matter what you do. If I'm in for a fight, I'll fight it to the bitter end. Cannot force me out. Not unless you find I've done something illegal that gives you a legitimate authority to remove me. Okay? May not like that answer, but I'm going to stick with it. All right. Yes, your question number 2.
Okay, the question number 2 is our first speaker talked about communicating within the IRS as a whistleblower, and then from the ACLU as an external critic, but sort of an internal and an external critic. And there was once a mystique about the FBI that people knew hardly anything about it and thought, maybe these were the good old J. Edgar Hoover days, which may not have been good old for everybody, but at least there was a mystique about it, a secrecy about it, and an assumption that they were doing the right thing. With internal criticism, external criticism, and now very internal criticism from the top, I don't see anybody aggressively defending the institution right now as an institution, and I'm wondering if people will trust the institution in the same way, or will they view it as a political entity? Will they view it as people who are fighting for right, or will they view it as, why are these people at my door and who sent them? And I'd like to just hear your thoughts on that.
Having worked in public affairs in the FBI during a difficult time as well, because it was definitely after, all of these things came to be, surfaced after 9/11, I can tell you, unless you have a very strong executive over the Office of Public Affairs who is willing to defend and be as open as possible, the fear is going to keep building. The lack of trust will continue to build. You have to have a director who's willing to get out there and willing to take it on and put his soul on the line for making the change and letting people know what's really happening. So since we don't know, I'm no longer in the FBI. I'm as much like you as you are. I only see and hear and read what I see and hear and read, and it is important for someone to be in there, letting to know what's the real story. We need to know, but we've become so political now. Everything has been moved into camps, and you get to a point now that you don't know what to believe anywhere, anytime. Am I right? It's just too much. I don't know. So even if the FBI got out and told their story, it's just we've become so camped. What is the group? I just recently did a tour in Kenya for a mission with my church, and it was interesting to be there and see people who, to me, all looked alike and were all good people fighting each other from, this is my tribe and that's your tribe. And that's almost like what we've become in America. So it doesn't matter. I don't know if someone got out and defended the story, what tribe is going to believe it? Okay. Oh, is there another question?
Another question.
You give me the tough ones, so I got to get over on this side and get ready for you. All right, let's go.
Based on the last election,
Based on the last,
the last presidential election, I suspect I'm not the only person who is very concerned about the integrity of the upcoming elections. And the fear that with, as you've said, the cyber wars and whatnot, just the demonstration of the Iowa caucus and the use of an app that just was such a total failure. How much confidence can we have that the government is going to ensure that the results of the upcoming election are accurate?
why am I being asked these very difficult questions? Let me just say, I believe you've got men and women within the FBI, the CIA, and these other federal agencies who will do their best and do the right thing. I have no doubts about it. My fear is you may not know the truth when you hear it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. These men and women are going to do the job, and they're going to do the right thing. How it comes out to you from whatever is at the very top is a different story. I trust the men and women on the ground. That's all I have to say.
I have two questions. I hope that's allowed. There's nobody behind me, so I think I'm safe. The first question is, the first gentleman who presented to us 2 weeks ago was an FBI agent who was undercover with white supremacists and the Ku Klux Klan. And he left the agency because he felt that, if I'm understanding what he said correctly, that the reports that he was sending out were just dead end in some box and nobody did anything about them. Now, based on what you've said to us today about talking about things going up higher and people, reacting to them, and that everything is, reacted to, is that no longer happening? Because he was in the FBI in the 2000 to 2010.
I'm not sure of how things are handled in the FBI from that perspective. I can just tell you what it was in my time period. And during that time period, I had responsibility for domestic terrorism, which is the white supremacist group, intelligence. I had responsibility for that. Any intelligence on domestic terrorism, terrorists or individuals or groups, we collected the information, reviewed it, and if it was necessary to get in touch with law enforcement in their communities, have a conversation, or go and meet with them and interview them, we conducted investigations as we would do it normally. I believe the FBI is doing that today. I can't even hearken to think that agents, and I'm again going to the ground level agents, aren't out there doing that exact same work today. I don't have any fears that I know they're doing their jobs. This is what they're trained to do. And folks, listen, FBI agents aren't clones. We all come in with different perceptions, right? I came in as the little girl whose mother taught her, you gotta fight for justice. There are thousands of me in the FBI. So these are not people who are some clone, rubber stamp clones who are going to do work you tell them to do. This is not that time period. These are people who believe in this country, they believe in a service to the American people, and they're doing their work. Don't let what you see in the media convince you that they're not doing their work. They are doing their work, okay? Does that help?
Yes, thank you very
All
much.
right.
The second question is, you just said a few minutes ago that it depends on how strong the directors feel about what's happening, how much gets done one way or the other. With the revolving door that's happened to the directors in the FBI in the last couple of years, how does that affect the running of the FBI and the esprit de corps of the agency?
I would say, I'm going to start first with the end of that question with esprit de corps. I would say, based upon just what I see in the media and you, there's probably some lack of esprit de corps. There's probably some frustration among people. Wouldn't you feel that way? I'm just thinking from a human being perspective, because they know they're doing the work every day. They know that they're making a difference, but they don't see their stories being touted. You see ugliness and negative comments, and you don't see the positive of what they're doing. So I would feel frustrated. I could go in there and I could do all kinds of things right now because I got that public affairs state of mind, but I wouldn't, because I wouldn't have any more eyelashes left, and both legs would then go. But I believe that it doesn't matter if you change your director every year. The foundation of the people, what you see are the executive level very top. The foundation of the rest of those people are actually rising through the rank and file until they get to this level, and then some director comes in and starts doing his appointment. Do you understand what I mean by that? So you've got a Department of Justice, let's say, and you've got an Attorney General, but who are the people who just got angry and made comments about a decision that was just made, right? It's the rank and file of those U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys who move up rank and file. So don't forget that. Whenever there is a political change, it's here, it's not there. The foundation is still there. Got it? Okay. All right, thank you.
Hi, I have two questions as well.
Why do you guys keep doing the two-question thing?
One,
Okay.
Three comes.
One, would you talk a bit about the makeup of the FBI? Do many people look like you? And what kind of people are you looking for? You also referred to a retirement age.
I referred to as?
Retirement age?
Uh-huh.
Is there a set age? Okay. And number two.
Let's pause for a second. Don't I look young for my age and to be retired? Thank you. I just wanted to, make you say that. Okay.
And number two, would you talk a bit more, please, about the National Citizens Academy, and how does one contact them?
Great questions. Let's start with the first one. Well, let's just do the National Citizens Academy because that's fast. The National Citizens Academy, you may go through the Office of Public Affairs, just send a communication email into them and tell them if your interest. Also, if you're a member of any national groups or organizations, their members can be, or you can go through your office, local office, which I gather here would be either the Washington field office in Washington, D.C., in order to express that you're interested in being a member of the Citizens Academy. Now, let's talk about a little bit about those who look like me or think like me. I do want to make sure it is emphasized that the FBI is, at this date, still not where they should be from a diverse standpoint. They are not. They've got a ways to go. We still do not reflect the men and women of the United States of America. So come on, folks. Let's do a better job of recruiting. Not that I want to be negative, but I know people say, we've tried recruiting. No, you haven't. If you try, when you get focused on something, you want it done, it's done. So I want to get that part straight. The FBI's retirement program is age 50. So that's its earliest first retirement, age 50 in 20 years. So I was able to leave and go and work at Bank of America for the following 10 years after that, and I retired from there too. So I've got a double retirement. So much for the eyelash and the leg, right? Not bad, not bad. But the mandatory retirement for special agents is age 57, because there is a perception that they cannot run, handle a bad guy, take them down after age 57. Between 50 and 57 is you're supposed to be slowing down, but guys, come on, I'll take you on. I can do it. Okay. Does that answer your question? You're welcome.
Oh, okay. Mine is so general. You speak of the basic folks who keep these agencies running, honorable people mainly, right? All of this is up to their levels. They're trying to deal with our country the way we want them to deal with our country.
I'm not saying trying. I know they are.
They are, okay.
I'm just worried about what you hear.
I believe that the majority of folks living in our country want this type of organizations to be in charge of us, governments that are doing these things. I guess I have a question. Does anyone have any idea how we get rid of the ones that are the professional politicians who have, when I was younger, we didn't have professional politicians. We had folks who came from their states, and then they couldn't wait to get back home to their jobs, okay, that they were used to. We have professional politicians now. They started teaching it in our universities, how to be a professional politician. I am so concerned about that particular thing because I think they forget to represent us in the way they're supposed to, no matter what vows they take. I think they just try to stay in their own roles. And I am very concerned about that constituents keep returning these characters. The question is, how does one get past that to have our country back again for most of us that want it a certain way?
I believe the question is more, what are you going to do to make a difference? It's not. I've told you the men and women of the FBI are doing their job. I truly believe that. If the politics and this tribalism that we've gotten ourselves stuck in is a problem for you, you've got to make the tough decisions yourself. That's the best way I can say it. I am married to someone who is a diehard dues-paying member of the Republican Party. His son is not. His son and I are independents, and we see things very differently, and it is a constant struggle in my home. And so I had to make some decisions about that with the two of us. We cannot speak on politics anymore. But as he contributes, I contribute. My son does his thing his way. You see what I mean? We each have to take our own step and do that which we think is important to do. By the way, if you want to see my husband, you just go back and you look at the recent episode of Fox News where they were interviewing older and middle-aged individuals at a little small restaurant in North Carolina. The black guy with the big red Make America Great hat on was my spouse. We've got issues. Anyway, not to get into politics in any shape, form, or fashion, but each of us have a job. We're going to have to play a role. Make a decision what you want to do to change the politics that we have in America today. No one can sit any longer. Everyone has to be active. Everyone needs a voice. Everyone needs to speak up. Everyone needs to take action.
Thank you for your service. Just a quick question. Could you comment on the lack of cooperation from Silicon Valley in artificial intelligence with the government agencies, CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, artificial intelligence? Like Google, the Google technicians refuse to help the government developing artificial intelligence.
You mean when private industry refuses to help the government when they're doing the investigations or won't share that information?
No, developing better and better artificial intelligence. They have the capabilities. I don't know if you're pretty much aware of that, but they have refused to cooperate with the government in artificial intelligence.
Right. You're asking me what my thoughts about that?
Yes.
I think the security of the United States of America is far more important than your individualized, personal, how much money you want to get to your shareholders. And that, I'll stop.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Oh, one more? One more?
If we have time for one more?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have time. I'm sorry to tell you, Cassie, we have time.
They're not letting me go, man. These questions are getting hotter and hotter. I have to take my jacket off.
And I have a really boring one at the end.
Hi, thank you again for your service. I think I have a fairly easy question. It's kind of an operational question. And that is, you mentioned earlier about the hard work that the field agents do and the information that they collect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you can comment on how well that is received by, in any particular town or city or state, how well is that received by the local law enforcement?
In terms of the information that they have?
Yeah, the FBI, how well is the relationship with local law enforcement?
Very strong, very strong. The FBI, when I left, had 84 joint task forces. There are fusion centers for gathering intelligence. It's out there. All I'm saying is we don't have a final mechanism for making sure all of this is brought together and exchanged. There are great relations with the FBI, Secret Service, IRS, the military. Oh, they're out there. They're getting things together. They're working with state and local law enforcement. There are very good relations. Don't believe for one second if they're showing something that they're not, even at the lowest local level. If there's a need, they're there and they're accessible, and they will provide the support that's necessary.
And the local law enforcement is receptive and willing to cooperate?
Yes, yes. Because you'll find that a lot of the best intelligence is actually with the local law enforcement. They're the ones who are going to get it first.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one final question. Sorry. I want to know how you ended up at the FBI.
Oh, good
You
Lord.
didn't tell us that.
Okay, that's a good question because, that was not my expectation in life. I was supposed to be Thurgood Marshall and go to law school and do those things. I went to law school. Here's the interesting thing. I'm in law school. I clerked at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Virgin Islands. I clerked at state government because I was in Louisiana. I went to Loyola Law School. I am a Louisiana State University Go Tigers grad. Did you see the game? Okay, I just wanted to know. And so I'm in law school, and then I started clerking everywhere, state and local government, large white firm, small black firm, this, that, and all that stuff. And then at the end of all of it, it was like, oh my gosh, I do not want to be an attorney. I'm sorry, Mom, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. But the good thing about going to law school is it did teach me the analytical skills I have. I like to write, and I'm very analytical. So that's a positive, right? And I can communicate. So I'm working at a television station in New Orleans. And this television station was owned by the same Jesuits who had oversight for Loyola University Law School. And I needed an internship, I needed a job. So they said, well, since you've got this background in television, you can go work there, just help the news person at night. And I would go in, and whatever days I could get some time, and I would help them get the newscast together, blah, blah, blah. Well, one day I'm working, and I get a phone call, and a guy says, my name is so-and-so. I robbed a bank in Washington, D.C., and I accidentally shot and killed the teller there. And I've been on the run ever since. I'm in the French Quarter, and I like to give myself up. But I know if I give myself up to the cops, they'll kill me. I want the media to be out there. Can you come? And I said, tell me where you are, sir, and we'll get somebody out there. I run to the newscaster, the director of the news. Oh, this guy, and the newscaster said, Cassie, it's 2 minutes before the 10 p.m. We don't have time for that. Just call the FBI. I called the FBI. They went out and they made the arrest. The next day is this story, this huge story, right, and things along that line. And the FBI had to come and interview me because he had confessed to me, and they prepped me for trial, and then it's just once that started, they started sending people out to talk to me and recruit me. And that's when I say, you know, when you want the right people, you pursue them, and you get the right people if you want them. They wanted me, and they did a great job of recruiting me, and then one of the gentleman who turned out to be the agent assigned to my background investigation, I married. So, life was good.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank
This was
you.
great.
Thank you,
very
Cassie.
much.
Amazing.